Welcome back, Forgotten Crimes fans. Today, we're delving into the case of Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, one of the most powerful and feared drug lords in history. El Chapo's rise from humble beginnings to the top of Mexico's most dangerous cartel is a story of ambition, violence, and an international drug empire that spanned decades. His dramatic escapes from prison, his eventual recapture, and the impact of his criminal organization on the global drug trade make his story both captivating and terrifying. Joaquin Archibaldo Guzman Lara was born on April 4, 1957, in La Tuna, a small rural town in the Sinaloa state of Mexico. Growing up in extreme poverty, Guzman's early life was shaped by hardship and a family involved in drug trafficking. His father was reportedly involved in the cultivation of opium poppies, and by the time Guzman was a teenager, he had already entered the world of drug smuggling. Guzman's criminal career began in earnest in the 1980s when he started working for Miguel Ángel Félix Gallardo, the leader of the Guadalajara cartel, one of Mexico's most powerful drug organizations at the time. As Gallardo's trusted associate, Guzman learned the ins and outs of drug trafficking and began establishing his own network of contacts across Latin America and the United States. In 1989, when Gallardo was arrested, his empire fragmented, giving Guzman the opportunity to rise in the ranks. He formed the Sinaloa cartel, which would go on to become one of the most dominant drug trafficking organizations in the world. Under Guzman's leadership, the Sinaloa cartel expanded its operations into cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine, and marijuana. They smuggled drugs into the United States through tunnels, trucks, and even submarines, earning billions of dollars in revenue. El Chapo's genius for logistics, along with his ruthless approach to business, helped him grow his empire. His cartel employed brutal tactics, including murder, kidnappings, and bribery, to eliminate rivals and control key territories. The cartel's violence was not limited to other criminals. Law enforcement, journalists, and civilians were often caught in the crossfire of its brutal methods. One of the key factors in El Chapo's success was his use of underground tunnels to transport drugs across the U.S.-Mexico border. These tunnels, some of which were equipped with ventilation systems and lighting, allowed the Sinaloa cartel to move massive quantities of narcotics undetected. Guzman's innovative smuggling techniques, combined with his ability to bribe officials, made it nearly impossible for law enforcement to stop the flow of drugs. However, despite his growing power and influence, Guzman's reign was not without challenges. In 1993, he was arrested in Guatemala and extradited to Mexico, where he was sentenced to 20 years in prison for drug trafficking and murder. But even behind bars, El Chapo continued to run his empire. His time in prison would be short-lived, as in 2001, Guzman made his first legendary escape. With the help of corrupt prison guards, he smuggled himself out of the high-security facility in a laundry cart. El Chapo's escape was a major embarrassment for Mexican authorities, and his years on the run only solidified his mythic status. Despite being a fugitive, Guzman remained one of the most wanted men in the world, and his cartel continued to dominate the drug trade, particularly in cocaine distribution. In 2014, after more than a decade on the run, Guzman was captured again in Mazatlan, Mexico, in a joint operation between Mexican Marines and U.S. federal agents. His capture was hailed as a significant victory in the war on drugs. However, the celebration was short-lived. Just over a year later, in July 2015, Guzman escaped once again, this time through a mile-long tunnel dug directly under his cell in the Altiplano maximum security prison. The tunnel was equipped with ventilation, lighting, and even a motorcycle mounted on rails to aid his quick escape. The audacity of his second escape only furthered El Chapo's legend. His ability to evade capture and maintain control of his vast criminal empire despite being imprisoned twice baffled law enforcement agencies around the world. For many, it seemed as though El Chapo was untouchable. However, the walls began to close in on him again. After his 2015 escape, Guzman's pursuit became a top priority for both Mexican and U.S. authorities. In January 2016, after a brief interview with actor Sean Penn for Rolling Stone brought unwanted attention to his hideout, Guzman was finally recaptured in a military raid. This time, Mexican authorities were determined not to let him slip through their fingers again. In 2017, Guzman was extradited to the United States to stand trial for a host of crimes, including drug trafficking, murder, money laundering, and arms smuggling. His trial in Brooklyn, New York, was dubbed the trial of the century, as it exposed the inner workings of the Sinaloa cartel, including its vast network of corruption, violence, and drug distribution. The trial featured shocking testimonies from former associates, hitmen, and members of law enforcement, painting a detailed picture of El Chapo's criminal enterprise. In February 2019, after months of testimony and deliberation, Guzman was found guilty on all charges. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, plus 30 years. Today, El Chapo is serving his sentence at the U.S. Penitentiary Administrative Maximum Facility, ADX, in Florence, Colorado, often referred to as the Alcatraz of the Rockies. The maximum security prison is designed to prevent any possibility of escape. While Guzman may be behind bars, the impact of his cartel continues to be felt. The Sinaloa cartel remains one of the most powerful drug trafficking organizations in the world, and the violence associated with the Mexican drug trade persists. El Chapo's arrest and conviction may have been a major victory for law enforcement, but the legacy of his criminal empire lives on. El Chapo's story is one of a man who built a multi-billion-dollar empire on drugs, violence, and corruption, outsmarting law enforcement at every turn until his final capture. His life serves as a stark reminder of the human toll of the drug trade and the ongoing battle to dismantle the global drug cartels. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Forgotten Crimes. We love diving into the world of true crime, exploring the stories that grip the world and uncovering the details that make these cases so fascinating. If there's a case you're curious about or if you have any thoughts to share, let us know. Until next time, keep your curiosity alive, and remember, the world of crime is as complex as it is captivating.